and WNBA talk. And this first part of it is centered around the disparities between the two NBA bubbles. As you know, the NBA, are in Orlando in Disney at the higher echelon complex. And the WNBA is in IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. And some of the conditions of some of those rooms for those players are pretty bad. Uh, and one of the things that kind of caught my attention was the fact that WNBA had previously or just more recently made some strides with their new collective bargaining agreement. It looked like things were moving in the right direction, in a better direction for the ladies of the WNBA. And of course, this pandemic was not out of our control. There's nothing we can do about that. It just happened to smack us in the face. And it kind of resembles that quote from Mike Tyson that we use a lot or we use often. Everybody has a game plan until they get smacked in the mouth, until they get punched in the face. So in essence, the entire nation got punched in the face with this pandemic and this coronavirus. We had a stoppage of sports. It was dead for a while. So leagues made strides to attempt to come back. Like I said, the NBA will be starting on July 30th. The Sixers' first scrimmage is this Friday. The teams are all there. They have been there for at least a week. They've been getting practices in. If you go to Instagram, if you follow any of the players, you can see pictures, especially Tobias Harris of the Philadelphia 76ers. He's posted several pictures of them working out in practice with some of the guys in some of the pictures. So it's good to see that the guys are there. And the WNBA, not so much. I have, as a basketball fan, I have a small affinity for the WNBA because I think it's mostly good basketball. There are a lot of talented female athletes, female basketball players that make up the WNBA, and I feel like they are not treated fairly in comparison to how the men in the NBA are treated. And at one point, I also mentioned on air that I felt like the NBA should try to help a little bit more to their sister organization. It's called the WNBA for a reason. Okay, NBA, WNBA. All they did was add another letter on the front of it. So I feel like the WNBA is getting the short end of the stick with this restart and with their conditions and where they're staying. A lot of the players are saying that the bubbles are a mess. Um, it's not so much that the bubbles are a mess, and more that players are having wildly different experience depending on their team, location, and personal needs. One of the big issues, I think, is, or what they're saying, one of the biggest issues is the food, uh, the menus for the leagues. Um, they have pictures out. You can Google and find them yourself. The Lakers and LeBron James have somehow managed to be receiving gourmet, delicious looking sushi dinner, while the rest of the league ate a tray of food that looked like it was hastily thrown together at a rest stop. And I've seen the pictures of that. Like I said, you can Google this stuff. And, they showed the pictures, and I saw them actually on TV. They look like just what they said. Like it was something that you're traveling down the road and you're like, look, I'm a little famished, I'm a little hungry. Need to put something on my stomach, to keep me going. And then you pop in a rest stop, and you just throw some stuff together, whatever's there, and you take that and you eat it just to satisfy the purposes of having something to eat, okay, if you will. So it's amazing how much money is involved in both of these leagues where there's that much disparity in what's going on. Diamond DeShields of the Chicago Sky says that she has reported to the WNBA and told them that she's a vegetarian. She doesn't eat meat. Yet they keep sending her non-vegetarian meals. So she's stuck eating the same thing every day from the hotel bar while she's still waiting to hear back on how the issue will be handled. So she's in limbo. Um, the league asked players to fill out a card with their dietary restrictions on it prior to heading to Orlando, but that information is not being heeded. So that is a little bit of a disrespect to the ladies of the WNBA. I mean, why ask or have them fill out a card, a menu card, if you're not going to adhere to what's going on? Los, the enforcer, what's going on? It really kind of makes no sense if you ask them to fill out a card and then you just do what you want to do. What's the point? You just want to see what people are eating or what people's diets are like. Doesn't really make much sense to me. So hopefully these things can get fixed. Um, there haven't been any complaints from the NBA, mind you, about the players' quality of their rooms themselves. So like the NBA living pretty well, WNBA not so much. Um, some players in the WNBA are saying that their rooms are okay, but then you have others who knows that some atrocious conditions. They have dead worms, bed bug traps, and a laundry facility that looks like the Saw-themed escape room. So there is what you've just heard, a huge disparity within the bubbles down there in Florida, and it needs to be fixed. I could probably do an entire show or at least a half a show on the differences with the WNBA. And we did do a little thing on the WNBA around the time that they were discussing their collective bargaining agreement on how they were treated, how a lot of those women in the past have had to go overseas and play a lot more than they've expected to. So it's a lot more wear and tear on their bodies than it is on the players in the NBA who get to relax in their off season or work out whatever they need to do. But a lot of these women in the WNBA would usually have to end their season in the summer and then go back overseas and continue playing to live the lifestyle that they were used to make up for the lack of, the compensation in WNBA. But again, they changed that a little bit. They made some changes. Things got a little bit better. And I still think there can be improvement in the WNBA in that collective bargaining agreement and the conditions of the women there. Like, I don't understand how these rooms and these campuses were not scoped out and dealt with before. You had to have a plan, or you had to have some idea of or thoughts of places where you would take the ladies to stay in Florida, have them centralized, mimicking the NBA. But you got to do your due diligence. Maybe they should have called some NBA people who did their work for them or their research for them and had them help with theirs, and maybe things would have been a little bit better for the WNBA. So we'll see how it plays out if things get better. Like if things get better, like I said, I always have my ear to the news and to the streets, so I will definitely stay on top of that, and I will alert you if conditions change for the better or for the worse for either side. And like I said, once we get these scrimmages going, the Sixers scrimmage, the first one will be Friday against the Memphis Grizzlies. Initially, I mentioned to you all that we're going to see some sloppy play, I believe, in the start. And that's no disrespect to the league itself. It's just the fact that these guys have been off for months and just haven't played basketball. And anybody who plays any kind of sport, if you don't play that sport for an extended period of time, you're going to be a little sluggish. You're going to be a little rusty when you start up the way they're starting up. And I mean, I love, like I said, I continually give the NBA kudos on how they strategically planned this out where they're giving these teams a mini training camp, if you will. They're going to have some scrimmage games. Then they're going to have 8 seeding games. And then they'll begin the playoffs. Uh, in essence of what's going on, the state of the nation, they decided to just bring the 22 teams that were in playoff contention. So the 8 teams that were not in playoff contention were not invited, which I think was a good idea because you didn't really need an overload considering what's going on with everything, the pandemic and the coronavirus and all of that nature. So you didn't need an overload. So them inviting the 22 teams, they've turned ballrooms into practice gyms, scrimmage courts, whatever. So again, we'll see what happens when things start. Like I said, if things get better, things get worse, I will have all the information for you, or as much information as I can for you. And we will definitely keep you abreast of what's going on down there. So, folks, right now, we're going to continue Sports Rap Radio Show, also Sports Rap Podcast. We're going to talk some more WNBA. And we're going to talk specifically about, like we just discussed a little bit, the safe and health and welfare of the players. And one particular player, Elena Delle Donne, from Delaware, University of Delaware, the reigning MVP for the Washington Mystics, who are the reigning champions of the WNBA. Her issue with the panel of physicians and the medical exemption in the WNBA has really gotten under her skin. And the headline for this is basically just this. In a surprising decision, the WNBA's designated panel of physicians denied 2019 league MVP Elena Delle Donne medical exemption from the 2020 season. Okay, she currently has Lyme disease and must forego her salary if she sits out the season. So, again, I don't understand what the hierarchy of the WNBA is thinking. And if you don't know anything about the Lyme disease, I just know a little bit. It's something that you cannot get rid of. There's no cure for it. At one particular mention, if you really want to hear it, and this will probably make your jaw drop, she has to take 64 pills a day, which, in my opinion, I think warrants a medical exemption. We have now a condensed period of time for them to play games. And the difference for the WNBA is the fact that their season hadn't started yet. Okay, with the NBA, it started, then it had to be halted and postponed, and then they have a restart. For the WNBA, this is like their regular season. There's no restart or anything like that. This is just an abridged version of their regular season. And for this to be considered by them a non-medical exemption is a little crazy to me, if you will. I just feel like for someone that has to take that many pills a day, it's going to be a tremendous strain on her body physically with playing, practicing. We saw the food, so the nourishment is a tough part as well. And it's also saying that if she was to sit out the season, then she wouldn't get paid, which I think is a crock of crap. I think that the panel needs to rethink this and or maybe even be restructured. It says the independent panel of doctors the league appointed to review high-risk cases have advised that I'm not high risk and should be permitted to play in the bubble, Delle Donne announced in a statement. Lyme disease, for some reason, is not included in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's list of underlying conditions that could put someone at an increased risk for severe illness from COVID 19. So, just so you know, if you didn't already, I am no doctor. I don't work in the health professional field. So I don't really know. But as I was doing my research and I kind of incorporate the conditions of the Lyme disease and the fact that Elena Della says that she has to take that ridiculous amount of pills every day. Now, mind you, I said 64 pills a day, not 64 pills a week, 64 every 2 weeks, 64 pills a day, which when you first hear that, you think, nah, there's no effing way somebody has to take that many pills in one day. How? How do you get that done every day? And then you incorporate it to a professional athlete who has a vigorous physical schedule and still has to take this medication per day, this amount of medication per day, if you will. To me, it's utterly ridiculous how she couldn't be a special case, if you will. You know, like this, I just read to you that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention don't put her as a risk. I don't understand how. I think she is a risk. Like I said, you know, you have to take this much medicine for one particular person each day as an athlete, with the rough schedule that you have, the wear and tear on your body between games and practices, and just staying in shape throughout the season. And again, like I said, it's going to be intensified a little bit more than their normal time frame of their season, because now we're condensed. And it's just strange to see how this is affecting her. You know, it's really, really different. You know, allowing players with underlying conditions to opt out with pay, and thus served as an extra precautionary measure. And it alleged, or supposedly ensured, that no player would feel pressured to endanger her health in order to receive full compensation for the 2020 season. So I'm just going to take a second and let that marinate for you all for a second, and then I'm going to read it again, that one particular part. And you heard what I just said. You know what I said. They don't consider that her a high risk because of Lyme disease. But now it says, they say that the opt out with pay is a precautionary measure, which I think fits for Elena Della in her situation. And then they state that it ensured that no player would feel pressured to endanger her health. Well, there you have it right here. She's upset because she feels pressured and endangered about her health. And if she doesn't play, she won't get paid. So you contradict what you say right there when you tell her that she has to play. She doesn't get the medical exemption. When you previously, or you put out there in the initial stages, that no athlete would feel pressured to endanger her health in order to receive full compensation. Wow. It kind of takes me back to last week when we talked about Miss Loeffler of the WNBA with her contradictory comments. And I think even with the new CBA for the WNBA, which the players agreed to, and of course, there were some things in there that were improved. So I can understand why the players agreed on it. But like we said, this is a new fold into the mix. Like I said, something that was out of our control. A pandemic, a virus, which has now mutated so it can survive. If you didn't already know that. That's why there's been a spike in cases all over the country, and why places, cities in the country have began to close places once again. If you didn't know, the city of Philadelphia, no public gatherings initially of 50 or more until till the end of February 2021. A week or a few days after that announcement, it was dropped down to 25 because of the spikes in cases around the nation. I was out Saturday and I saw a lot of restaurants or some restaurants who literally moved themselves outside, which was the start of the reopening, the dining outside. So a lot of them have literally moved restaurants outside. Where you go past, they have a parking lot, they have tables outside, and it's set up in the parking lot. I don't get it. I think the hierarchy of the WNBA needs to be revamped. Dr. Ann Redding, the team physician for the Mystics, designated Delle Donne high risk while also clearing her to play is confusing and appears to go against the precautionary approach that decisions related to the coronavirus should demand. So, you have the specific team doctor who designated her higher risk, but also cleared her to play. Yeah, they had to get the what the F button on that. And I think I may. How do you clear someone to play after designating them high risk? Mind-boggling to me. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't see how those things go into play. Another quote was, and I quote, "I know doctors don't always agree with each other and that there are different opinions on certain things within the medical community. And now I have a player who was in an incredibly difficult situation because of the way things are lined up." So because of the screwed up way that this particular issue is being handled by the WNBA, you have a player who is suffering from their decisions. Elena Delle Donne also shared with ESPN, "I love my team, and we had an unbelievable season last year, and I want to play. But the question is whether or not the WNBA bubble is safe for me. My personal physician, who has treated me for Lyme disease for years, advised me that I'm at high risk for contracting and having complications from COVID-19. The Mystics have indicated that they support Delle Donne." Mighty Mouse, what's going on, my friend? Thanks for tuning in. Her head coach, Mike Thibault, "As with all our players," and I quote, "as with all our players, we have and will support Elena throughout this process. The health and well-being of our players is of the utmost importance." New teammate Tina Charles, who also requested paid exemption for an underlying medical reason, is still awaiting the results of her evaluation. So the WNBA and this determining players as high risk and then clearing them to play is a mess. I don't understand how you have doctors with these particular at this level who, in my opinion, seem to be contradicting themselves and making this mistake. If you diagnose someone as higher risk, there's no way you should clear them to play. There's no way. Now, especially a sport like basketball. Now, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, and I'll say if it was something like tennis, I could understand, because there's complete social distancing on a tennis. There's 1 versus 1. There's a distance between the court, and there's a net in between. So that social distancing is not as big a concern as the WNBA. where you have 5-on-5. So at any given time, you have 10 players on the court. These players are in very, very close proximity. Social distancing is not warranted in basketball play. It can't happen the way it should. You can't have, that 6 feet between everybody. It's like we used to joke and we say basketball is a contact sport. So you can't say that someone's higher risk or high risk and then turn around and clear them to play. So to me, underlying factors, knowing what I know, reading what I've read, being around some of the people that I've been around, kind of makes me, and these are my thoughts only, makes me believe that there was some type of pressure or there was some type of unfortunate guideline set out by the WNBA executives to these team doctors and to these other physicians to have these teams play. And I mean, it sucks for Elena Delle Donne being in this position, but again, we know the whole premise. It's about money, ratings, things of that nature, and how would it look if the reigning MVP, a star in the league, superstar in the league, did not play? They thought about that part, but they didn't care or they didn't think about the actual health of that particular person or that particular player. So, she feels betrayed, and she's right. And again, I tell you, 64 pills a day. There's no way, and it's due to Lyme disease, but there's no way, in my opinion, that anyone who has to consume 64 pills a day to control whatever condition they have, whatever condition they're suffering from, and then still have to play in order to get paid. I think she should be granted the medical exemption. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I hope it will. I feel for her. And like I said, I was looking up at the WNBA because of the changes they initially made. But now with this, I have a little different outlook now. It's changed. My outlook has changed a bit with this. So I am going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Sixers and the restart of the NBA. And if you haven't already heard, there has been a change with the Sixers. Brett Brown is experimenting with moving Shake Milton into the starting lineup as the point guard, moving Ben Simmons to the 4. Folks, I like it. I wish it had been done sooner. So I will be back on the other side once again on Facebook Live. You can chime in once I get started on that and let me know what you think about that. It's your boy D. It's 11:37, 37 minutes past the 11 a.m. hour. You are tuned into SportsRap on Heat 100 Radio. Stay with me. Come back. Go get you something to drink. I know it's hot, so you should be in a cool place like I am. Go get you something to drink. Come back. Tune back in. And we're going to talk some Sixers. Ben Simmons moving to the 4. Maybe even a little bit of that Al Horford switch to the bench as a role, a huge role on that second unit. We'll see you on the other side in just a few minutes. The building